Everybody's looking for a fantasy, someone to make them happy for eternity. And everybody's looking for a love to share, but never letting anybody else come near. I'm sorry.
Oh, hey there, I'm Chuck.
And I'm Dimitri.
I'm glad you guys can make it. We've got some exciting news for all of you.
Anyways, we're here to tell you about Phantasy Phranchises.
Phantasy Phranchises is a cross-industry corporation that provides goods and services to the masses.
Let's go look at some of the services and goods that Phantasy Phranchises has to offer.
Great idea. Phantasy Phranchises is a 100% completely legitimate fantasy company.
The full company name is Phantasy Phranchises Corporation, Incorporated, Limited Liability Company, Enterprise Empire Limited Organization, and our New York Stock Exchange symbol is PHPH.
And Phantasy Phranchises offers more and numerous products and services than any other company out there.
It's our fantasy guarantee.
If you can't find it, we'll fantasize it.
So just what kind of products do we provide?
Fantasy Farms is a branch of the company that provides all the agriculture and domestic needs of the Fantasy Farms company.
Fantasy Foods is a fantasy franchise branch that deals with the sales and production of all edible products of the fantasy franchise.
Fantasy Factories is a manufacturing branch of Fantasy Phranchises that handles all the manufacturing of all the products manufactured by Fantasy Phranchises.
Fantasy Friends is the fantasy franchise branch which is responsible for all the sales and care of all home-based living creatures.
Way down in your heart.
Fantasy Fashion is the Fantasy Franchise branch that handles all the sales and production of all the Fantasy Franchise garment line.
So baby, I'm sorry.
Fantasy Foundations oversees all of the various multifaceted clients and services of Fantasy Foundations.
There's nobody around. We turn.
So thanks for joining us. That was just a small sample of the many services that Fantasy Phranchises has to offer. In the next few weeks, we'll go into greater detail to exactly what those programs have to offer.
But that's not all. There's still a great many branches that are in the works, such as
Fantasy Safaris,
Fantasy Forests,
Fantasy First Aid,
Fantasy Flyers,
Fantasy Philosophers,
Fantasy Phones,
Fantasy Lifestyles,
Fantasy Forgeries,
Fantasy Fortunes,
Fantasy Phobias,
and Fantasy Flicks. So that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by.
and remember, if you can't find it, we'll fantasize it.